Hope everyone's doing well today. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers present. You know, of all the titles that I have enjoyed in this life, husband and father are two that I take special delight in, and in that order for a particular reason. My children one day will be grown and gone. My wife will still be there, Lord willing. If you didn't attend the singing on Friday, you missed a good time. And that, to those who really know me well, may sound weird because you know that I'm not a natural singer. I don't have a good singing voice. It takes 2 buckets for me to carry a single tune. I don't know how to breathe right when I sing. I end up yawning and having to stretch and really get my chin up, but it was a good time. I got to eat supper with Emily Wilson, who I don't see this morning, and Lydia Stubblefield. Those 2 sisters are good friends of mine who I've always thought of as the little sisters I never wanted. But I really enjoyed spending time with those who were here, especially those who were visiting with us. A couple brief items of housekeeping. Our VBS is coming up beginning July 10, and it's time that I begin imploring you to please begin bringing donations of cooks and snacks and drinks and whatnot and stack those in the fellowship hall. We obviously know that we depend on those donations to make the VBS a big hit and break time that we can get those little kids sugared up and get them back to class where they can have a sugar crash in class and hopefully sleep on the way home. If you would please, Lisa Gardner is kind of in charge of the food arrangement. There's Emily. I was just talking about you. Lisa Gardner is in charge of the food arrangements, so she would have more information on specifically what's needed, but I know cookies, snacks, drinks especially. 1 Peter 3. Let's get started. I'll be reading this morning from the English Standard. Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, when they see your respectful and pure conduct. Do not let your adorning be external, the braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry, or of the clothing you wear, but let your adorning be of the hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. For this is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves, by submitting to their own husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. And you are her children if you do good and do not fear anything that is frightening. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. Finally, all of you have unity of mind, sympathy, brotherly love, a tender heart, and a humble mind. Do not repay evil for evil, or reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, bless. For to this you were called, that you may obtain a blessing. For whoever desires to love life and see good days, let him keep his tongue from evil, and his lips from speaking deceit. Let him turn away from evil and do good. Let him seek peace and pursue it. For the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayer. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. Now who is there to harm you if you are zealous for good? But even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you will be blessed. Have no fear of them, nor be troubled. But in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason of the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect, having a good conscience, so that when you are slandered, those who revile your good behavior in Christ may be put to shame. For it is better to suffer for doing good, if that should be God's will, than for doing evil. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the Spirit, in which he went and proclaimed to the spirits in prison, because they formerly did not obey when God's patience waited in the days of Noah while the ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is, 8 persons, were brought safely through water. Baptism, which corresponds to this, now saves you, not as removal of dirt from the body, but as an appeal to God for a good conscience through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of God, with angels, authorities, and powers having been subjected to him. With the historical context, the writing of 1 Peter, which we've talked about every week so far, knowing the persecution that was to come and that they were then experiencing, why here spend time talking about domestic relations?
God's foundation is the woman, humanity. A part of it. I mean, not the foundation, but I mean, it's ordained.
Okay. Have you ever been through an exceptionally trying time, maybe at work, maybe, some extended part of the family was, having some issues, maybe just everything everywhere was busy? How did that affect your home life?
Adversely sometimes.
Oftentimes, it does. The place where we should seek and treat as a refuge oftentimes pays the price for what we experience in our daily lives, out and about in our jobs and whatnot. Oftentimes, because we're close with our husbands and wives, obviously, we share with them the things that occur to us in the world, but all too often we share with them the way that they occurred to us. That is, we mistreat them. Sometimes people are rude to us or ugly to us, and when we get home, we do the same to those that we live with, just because we're frustrated about what has happened outside the walls of the home. And we come home and we share that frustration by being frustrated with that person through no fault of their own. That's perhaps one reason. The second is when things are right in the home, how much easier is it to withstand the pressures of life that are outside the home? You get very close with the people you work with, especially when you spend so much time with them. If you train with them, if you work with them day in, day out, you're with them in stressful situations, you become really very close. And it's very easy to spot especially when you're close with a person and you know them, it's easy to identify that something's not right at home now, because they're acting out of character, they're doing things which they don't normally do. That's not natural for that person. So it's easy to identify that something's not right at the house. It must be, because nothing has changed here. So when things are right at home, it's much easier to weather those storms. Now, it's 2016. Hold on to your socks, because I'm fixing to try to knock them off. There are differences in men and women. Attention, Target shoppers, there are now differences in men and women on aisle 3. Why is it that we deny that there are differences in men and women? That's not to say that one is better than the other, but we are very different creatures. And thank goodness, if I had to live with another man, bless his heart, we would beat each other to death. It takes a woman to tame a man. Really. And those are the words that I use for a reason. Because men are oftentimes brutes, just wild creatures. We just wander, and I could live in a cave. I really could. I put this rock here. That's where I keep the squirrels until I'm ready to cook them on the fire. And then that hole is what I walk out of when I want daylight. I would be happy there. But thankfully, I have a sweet wife who has prepared a comfortable home for me that has pillows. Woo, it has pillows. And just things like that. Men and women are different. Now, just on its face value, let's look at the first 7 verses of 1 Peter. Who are those first 6 verses addressing? Who are they directed to? And so that's 6 verses, right? How many verses are directed towards men? Verse 7, 1. Women like to talk and converse a lot more than men do. Now, I've met some guys that could talk the horns off of a billy goat. Don't get me wrong. But women generally like to talk. They want to talk about feelings and be involved and be engaged. You know, guys, I've been some of the best fishing trips I've been on in my life. The only conversation was pass the bait. That's it. That's all that was said. And we had an outstanding time. Not to say that I don't like going fishing with my wife, but conversation occurs a lot more there. It's almost as though Peter, by inspiration, knew that let's discuss this a little more for women because we know that they listen better. And there's one verse for men because they knew that perhaps but they would say, hey guys, and we'd go, huh? We'd grunt and listen, oh, okay. And then we'd carry on. So just in terms of volume of writing, I think that's telling that, hey, there's differences in men and women in the way that we learn and communicate. Now, wives, be subject to your own husbands. And next week we'll be in chapters 4 and 5. Y'all have a good morning. What is meant to be subject? Okay, obedience. Does it mean? Okay, well let's back up. We'll build into it. 1 Corinthians 11:3 says, what in relation to husbands and wives? The head of the woman is the man, right? Ephesians 5:22, wives, submit yourselves to your husband as unto the Lord. Colossians 3:18, wives, submit unto your own husbands as is fit with the Lord. Now, someone mentioned obedience a few moments ago. We're going to get there more in just a few minutes. But the word likewise that 3:1 begins with refers to what?
Christian submission to government.
Okay, we've just got done in chapter 2 talking about being submissive to government and servants to masters and all these other relations, right? So likewise, as in these other cases, perhaps is being suggested here, or being how we may say it commonly. Wives, be subject to your own husbands, just to the good and gentle, right? Just to the good and gentle husbands. Just to those husbands who know how to treat you on a Friday evening, right? Just to those husbands that know just the right word to say when you're upset, right? What type of husband is being thought of?
Probably an unbeliever here.
Okay, and we know that because of the context, that without a word, by your conduct. Okay, so that what's being considered is those unbelieving husbands who may pagans, heathens, those husbands that may be not just watching, but closely scrutinizing the conduct of their wives, looking for an opportunity to get that verbal jab, not really hit them, calm down, but get that verbal jab in there. Oh, okay, so this is what this is all about. That's what's being considered here. If they would not attend to preaching, that the wives may convict them by their conduct. A wife's conduct is to be pure. Is the word wife a title? Yeah, sure. It's a category. I say prideful. I enjoy the title husband. It means that it has a context. It means something. It means something to me as well it should to every man who's a husband. Same is true with wives. It means something to be a wife. What's a wife's conduct to be? Pure? Respectful? In what things? In just spiritual matters? Is it difficult to behave yourself? Not just wives, all people. I saw some elbow shots there. I had to back up. Not just wives, but all people. Is it at times difficult to behave yourself? Yeah, sure it is. However, does it say something about your character when you're able to control yourself and have a calming influence on another person? The idea here is that these unbelieving husbands might see that there is something different about their wives. There's something, what is this? There's a change here. That even with all this going on, that they are conducting themselves properly, both inside and outside the home. That wife is to conduct herself in a way that she doesn't take part in any activity or action that would detract from her virtue. Do not let your adorning be external. Beauty is only skin deep, right? We hear that said, we say that. The idea here, jewelry, clothing, or all that's discussed. What benefit is outward beauty?
Temporary.
Yeah, it's temporary. Women seem to naturally seek that's beautiful, though, right? Are there any guys here who wear makeup? No? Good. All is right in my world. How many women here wear makeup? How much time do most of us guys spend? The longest, I cut my hair. I cut my own hair, and I cut it every week because my hair grows so fast that if I don't, I actually start to look kind of shabby. And that one haircut a week is about as much time as I spend on my hair all week. It takes me about 10 minutes to cut my hair. That one occasion, the rest of the week combined, it doesn't take me that long to do anything with my hair. Gentlemen, wives, close your eyes. Gentlemen, how long did it take your wife to get her hair ready this morning? It took a minute, right? Is there anything wrong with wanting to look nice? Is there anything wrong with wanting to be attractive? Is there anything wrong with wanting to look neat and clean and put together and to present yourself appropriately? Is there anything wrong with that?
But excessively.
Correct, sir. Peter's not condemning the desire to look well put together. That's not the idea that's being taught here. Think about the world that we live in a physical sense. Think about the nighttime sky and the beauty arrayed in the sky. Think about landscapes. If you're an ocean person, a water person, the beach, the water, the waves, the sunset over the water. Think about how beautiful that is. Think about a single snowflake. The way the water crystallizes. It's a beautiful picture. We live in a world of beauty. So it's not improper for a person to want to look nice. The idea is that you don't set your heart on those things that are merely physical. And that's not your primary focus. If it were, if Peter here were saying, no, you can't do this and you can't do that, you wouldn't even be able to wear clothes, right? Not the putting on of apparel. So you think that would be proper? No, of course not. Don't let your energy and your heart be consumed with the praise of others. It would be offensive if you so neglected your own appearance that your husband looked at you and were like, ugh, come on, you got to step up your game a little bit here, That would be offensive. So the idea is not to cast off all care of taking care of yourself and looking nice. At the time of this writing, it was common for women to actually weave into their hair gold ornaments, some of them very intricately designed or crafted. Women in Asian countries would oftentimes grow their hair very long, and it would be wound or braided into a singular lock in a style that was tied up with ribbons and bows, and was actually, from what I read, quite a sight to behold. Dress and hair among women were often flamboyant to gain attention. But all ornaments in this life will soon be set aside. So seek that beauty which endures eternally. But let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit. Who's the hidden man of the heart? No thoughts? In Romans 2:29, it was written that he is a Jew which is one inwardly, circumcision of the heart. What's the idea about a person, a true person, who you are? Let that be who you are. Not that which others may see and think of you, but let that be the true you. Spiritual adorning is not corruptible and is really of true value. All outward adorning, in the end, will perish. We often talk about the streets of gold. We hear that said, and we say it ourselves, and we sing about it, and we sing about heaven. And I guess the idea there primarily is to talk about the beauty of heaven, how beautiful it will be. But there's a second thought that I actually went to first when I first heard that. What is valuable here is considered there to only be worth putting under your feet. So what's of true value? A meek and quiet spirit. To be calm, to be contented, to be free from passion, pride, and envy. Your husbands really appreciate the conduct of a good wife. Men, think about this. How many of you know how many of you can name 2 brands of purses? I can name 2, a big bag and a little bag. Those are the two brands that I know. What about shoes? How many guys in here can name 3 or 4 different, I'm not talking about Nike and New Balance and Reebok. Take those off. Name a shoe designer. Anyone, any man.
Walmart.
Well, thank you, sir. Thought for a moment you're going to say Target. Name, maybe she's born with it, maybe it's Maybelline. What the point here is, women spend a lot of time adorning themselves and getting themselves ready, and most guys don't know the difference between a ball bearing and a Tahitian pearl, We just don't know. And really in the grand scheme of things, we don't care. It's not that important to us, those things. Now, we're glad that you look nice. We do appreciate and enjoy that, but we don't know the difference in a piece of broken glass and a diamond some days. Gentlemen, think about a time when you saw a woman who was attractive, who you thought was attractive, and then she opened her mouth. I have been in, I'm not singular here. I know that we have all been in contact with ladies who we thought were attractive, and then the filth that spewed from their mouth. A beautiful woman is one who can be trusted. What about the way that a woman treats her husband? Back to this chaste conduct. A woman has an amazing amount of power over her husband, whether she recognized that or not, and it's in how she speaks to him. A woman can destroy her husband's self-confidence and his motivation in a single sentence. A man puts unestimable value in the opinion of his wife and what she says to him, what she thinks of him. If she says to him, when all else, when the world is crumbling when the house is falling over, and the barbarians are at the door, she says, I love you. I trust you. You can do it. He's going to paint his war paint on, and he's going to sharpen a stick, and who's next? But if she says, this is why my mother told me not to marry you. My aunt was always right. You're such an idiot. Man, the power that a wife has over her husband. Ladies, have you ever seen a woman with a man and you thought, how did she get him? Good for her. He's good looking. It's the way she made him feel. Guys, it works the same way. You can truly value a good wife once you have one. The adorning that God values, a godly husband will value as well. And even if you don't have a godly husband, God will value your godly adornment. The great women of old are remembered for their submission, as Sarah is here. They're recognized by their gentleness and obedience. Sarah called Abraham Lord with a little L. Did this mean that Sarah was Abraham's slave? And we're actually going to spend most of our time here in these first 7 verses this morning. By intent, we're not running behind, we're right on schedule. I know you're worried. It's Father's Day, so we're here for a reason. Was Sarah Abraham's slave? Sarah told Abraham to do what with her?
Kick her out.
Cast out the bondwoman. And what did God tell him to do?
Listen to wash your wife.
But she called him Lord because she respected him, because she recognized that he had the authority to direct the affairs of his house. Sarah called him Lord how?
When the angel said she would conceive and have a son, she laughed and said, I'm too old, and my master is too old. So that's what the case that he's referring to.
Yes, sir. Did she say it where everybody could hear? And was it in front of a great crowd of people? Who was present when she called him Lord? What does that say about her view of him? Respecting your husband is not just something you do while he's present. It's something you do while he's absent. And it's something that you do in front of your children. And it's something that you do in front of other women as well when you are together. What you say to yourself is really a good indication of who you really are. The good news here is you also can be viewed and remembered just as Sarah is if you do well, which means if you obey in like manner. Not that you're fearful of threats, you're not in awe of any terror that may come to you by your husband or from outside, but you do what God has commanded because God has commanded it, and that's enough. All right, guys, it's our turn. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way. The King James renders it, likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge. What knowledge is being spoken of here?
We just got there saved.
Almost like, hey, pay attention. Don't be ignorant of this. You know this to be true. Men and women are different. Acknowledge that. Showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers are not hindered. Husbands have a command of equal weight here, even though it's only one verse as we understand them to be verses in comparison with the previous 6. The command is of equal weight. And it's equal in more than one sense. It's equal in terms of duty, that it's our duty to be obedient to it and to be kind to our wives, but also that we are equal in terms of spiritual value to God. It's manly to be gentle to your wife. You do not have to be tough to her or with her. You don't have to speak with her coarsely. You don't have to treat her poorly. You don't have to be short with her, and you don't have to prove a point with her. Fortunately, my wife knows that I'm just a large 5-year-old, and she's patient with me, thankfully. You know, Mark Twain said of a woman that he wouldn't marry a woman that he was worthy of because she would not be respectable. What I say is amen. Thankfully, I have a woman who I am not worthy of, and she puts up with me. The idea is that we're not subjugating our wives. Because we love them and because we obey God's word, they have attained a status that is not available to them in any other society or religion. You know, if feminists truly wanted to promote the benefit of freedom upon their gender, they would become Christians. The way that a husband is to treat his wife when he is a Christian is unequal to that in any other religion. Think about, third world countries, how women are often viewed and treated. They're often viewed as domestic slaves, truly, domestic slaves. They're a possession, a tool, or an object, only to do the bidding of the husband and to rear his children. This advance in the status of women is important because in this period in history, women did not have that status. You know, I've never been to a school of theology. I'm not a Bible historian, but I am a student of history. I love history. I'm the guy that a pot of black coffee and a stack of documentaries on a Saturday afternoon, that is living. That's me. I'm the most boring person on the face of the earth. Women, even in this country, really don't enjoy, because we have moved away from Christian values so much as a society, that women in this country now don't enjoy the value that was once placed upon them earlier in our nation's history. Used to, I wasn't alive then, but when a woman would come into a room, a man would stand and provide the chair if there was none available. And even if there were, that if a woman rose to leave from a table, the men would rise as well. That when a man encountered a woman, he would remove his hat. My challenge to us men is this: when you see a woman, let's be gentlemanly. Let's practice in public with women who we know and love, and perfect it at home with our own wives. When you see a woman toting in, that's a toting. When you see a woman carrying in, toting's a local term for if you're tuning in over the internet. If you see a woman carrying in, a crock pot and one of those big bags I talked about, 102 brands, and a baby, stop to help her. Let me give you a hand here. And I'm talking to myself as much as I am anyone else. Let me get that for you. Showing honor to the woman. We treat them with esteem and respect. This again, man, is both in the public realm as well as the private. How do we talk about our wives when we're at work? How do we speak of them when they're not present? How do we treat them in front of our children? Fathers, if you want your sons to live in a household with a happy wife who respects him as she should, you need to treat your son how to treat his wife now while he's young. Christian men, if you want your daughter to live in a household where she is respected and honored by her husband, you must demand that she marry a Christian. There's no other household where she will receive the respect and esteem due her than that of a Christian home. You know, there's been a lot of cry of inequality about the gender roles of men and women in society. And these battles have been taken to court so that the law of the land will ascribe that privilege to women. But really, women are shortchanging themselves when they say we want the law of the land to do that. There's no higher law than God's law. And this is what God's law commands us to do as husbands. To dwell with them according to knowledge, and to recognize that they are fellow heirs. They're of equal spiritual value. With this, social inequality is checked in a single thought. Galatians 3:28, there is no male and female, for you are one in Christ. That your prayers be not hindered. So that your prayers may not be. Who is the your? Is it just the men? Sir? Specifically. Specifically. Why specifically the husband? I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't hear well. Absolutely. Spiritual director of the household. The thought here perhaps is that there would be household prayers offered together as a husband and wife, a Christian husband and wife. Not only that, but when there's discord in the home, it can oftentimes be difficult to focus as you should, to attend to being the spiritual director in the home with kindness and gentleness. Because she's the weaker vessel. She's more delicate. Does it mean that she's of less value or that she's somehow inferior? No. Just that she is more sensitive. Men, when was the last time you cried as a man? Now, if I asked you when the last time your wife cried, you could probably tell me which day it was last week. That's just the way it is. We are to recognize that, and with that in mind, treat our wives gently and respectfully. Men are stronger in form and fortitude. If you don't believe me, ladies, let's step up and arm wrestle. We oftentimes can weather emotional storms. At least we can put on a stronger front. Finally, all of you have unity of mind, sympathy, brotherly love, a tender heart, and a humble mind. Do not repay evil for evil or reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, bless. And then, I believe it's Psalms 34 is quoted. So all of us have unity of mind. That's a harmony of thought, a harmony of purpose, a single intent and a single focus. We're to sympathize with each other, which includes understanding each other's positions and each other's feelings, and to love each other as family members, as we are. Now, next week, we'll be in chapters 4 and 5 together. That's because the day of July 3rd, I will be away. I will not be here, so we have to finish up in 1 week, which we will be able to do. I appreciate your good attention this morning.